Okay, so it's wonderful to get the crowd together again. It's Baruch Hashem, another beautiful summer in Masora Kolal. Some of the Chaver mentioned that they wanted to learn Ishbitz, and some of the Chaver mentioned that they wanted to learn Ramchal. So we're going to do something that's a little bit of those worlds together. They are to a certain extent different worlds, but this is, I think, the Tzad HaShavah B'neihem, and we'll see some of the work of the Ramchal as well that is very much connected to this. We're going to begin with the Hakdama to the Beis Yaakov. The Hakdama to the Beis Yaakov was written by Gershon Hanach, who was the son of the Beis Yaakov, the Yesod Yesharim, as he was known to some Chassidim, the Orchos Chaim, as he was known to other Chassidim. Those are the two primary Sfarim that he was famous for. Meaning, amongst the Ishbitz Chassidim, the Radzina Chassidim, he is known as either the Orchos Chaim or as the Yesod Yesharim. To everybody else, he's known as the Baal Tcheles. This is the original Gershon Hanach and Radzina that spent many years researching and trying to find the Tcheles. Kimat nobody holds his Tcheles today, with the exception of Radzina Chassidim and certain Breslov Chassidim that hold of the Radzina's Tcheles. He was a Goin Olam, undoubtedly, meaning he's also known as the Sidrei Tara because he wrote effectively a Talmud Bavli on Seder Taras, which when he published it, the whole world was very nervous about it because it was that good. Meaning people looking at it like, whoa, this is really good. People are going to think that this is the Gemara. Meaning he collected from everything that Chazal said everywhere in all of Torah Baal Peh, Sifra Sifrei Mechilta, everything, and put it into a effectively a Gemara instead of Taras. But he's also, for our purposes, he was the Rabbi Yehuda Anasi of Taras Ishbitz. He took all of it and turned it into a curriculum, meaning what Rabbi did to all of Torah Baal Peh, or the Mishnah, put it into a curriculum. So to a certain extent, that's what the Yesod Yesharim did. He took the Torahs of his grandfather, the Mashilach. He was the primary author and editor of his grandfather's work, and the primary author and editor of his father's work, and of his own work. Autodidactic in multiple areas of Chol. Taught himself Italian and Latin in order to be able to do research on the Chilazon and Big Day Kahuna. He hitched himself on a boat on a ride to Rome, where he made friends with some wealthy Polish noblemen, offered to be their translator and tour guide of the Vatican in order that they could get him into different places. I mean, he was a cool dude. Very, very cool. Aside from the fact that he was a Gon Olam. And I say cool with like all of the years I covered that deserves. It's like one of those people that like would have killed on Twitter. It was so short. It's like really with tremendous charifas. And he opens up this conversation that we're about to have with charifas. Now, the charifas that we're going to just take a peek at for the moment is not where we're going to start. That's not what's on your sheet. That's in page Aleph here. This is like Hakdama to his father said of the Beis Yaakov, where he begins with saying, "Av noisim cherpa alerch lemasa techaseh pneihem kol charfeh gam oisam yicharfu v'zeh oisam yirozu." This is such a tremendous embarrassment. What is this tremendous embarrassment? Here, should grab some sheets. What's the tremendous embarrassment? It says we have no idea what the Yedias Hashem is. We don't know meaning. There's a mitzvah of Yedias Elokus. There's a mitzvah of Avodas Hashem. We don't know who Hashem is, that we should serve Him. That's the beginning of his conversation. What are we supposed to be doing here? Because without knowing something, you don't know where to begin. And he talks about the fact that historically we've had challenges, we're looking in Galus, etc. He says that's not the whole story. He says, Kol eile nachdu banu Loi rak me'oivenu senenu umandinenu. It's not just from the people that have given us a hard time, that hate us, that have cast us out. Ach af me'achenu bali gemara gomer zimras. We also have tzaras from our brothers, the Bali Gemara. What's the people that he calls the Bali Gemara? These are the people, Gam Hema Be'uchrenu, they too in our darkness. Be'omram Malachem lahabit ulachpar ba'omek haloidai dvarim kichsavam v'hivyason v'lama lon lahagos lahavin taluma. You learn Gemara. You know what to do. You open up a Shulchan Aruch. You know what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. What more do you need in life? What more do you need? I mean, his historical context is talking about many generations of many Jews. He's not specifically making a mecha against those that are not Hasidim, those that are antithetical to the ways of Chassidus, because he's not making an argument for Chassidus here. He's making an argument for Penimiyus HaTorah B'chlal. And his argument is effectively that there are those that have suggested for many centuries that what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want you to do? It's like what we say in the Kinos. Ve'in Shiur rak HaTorah. Gemara. There's Torah, there's Gemara, that's it. That is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from you in this world, is to sit and to learn. As much as you can, for as long as you can, and understand as much of Torah Hashem as you possibly can. And that's a very beautiful thing. However, v'lo yasimu leiv la'azharas haTorah. They forgot the pasuk. And the pasuk is v'yadata hayom v'hashevoyse elav avecha ki Hashem hu ha'elokim b'shamayim imal v'al haaretz mitachas ein oid. There's a pasuk. The pasuk says that you should know something. And then return it to your heart. Whatever that means. Ki Hashem hu ha'elokim, that Havaya is Elokim, ha'elokim. V'shamayim imal, in the heavens. V'al haaretz mitachas, and in the earth below. Ein oid, there is nothing else. What exactly does it mean, nothing else? No other gods, no... Balatanya spends a lot of time on this pasuk. V'shamarta es chukav, and then you have to observe what is chukim. Yeah, you have to do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. But it begins with the idea Salakus. You have to know something. There is something that needs knowledge, that requires knowing. And then he writes, "V'chein Yisrael," and Moshe Rabbeinu also tells us, "Vayomer alehem simu levavchem l'chol ha'advarim asher anachim me'id b'chem hayom asher titzavem es pneichem nishmar la'asos et kol divrei HaTorah asos." It's also a chiyuv to listen to all the things that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying. Teach them to your children. Ki lo davar reik hu mikem, ki hu chayechem uvidvar hazeh tarich yom. This is not something empty. What's the havamina that it's something empty? That this is something that you're an Eved Hashem, you have to do what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants. That was that. Loi davar reiku. It's not something that is empty. There is something inside of it, which means that there is Penimiyus. That's Moshe Rabbeinu says that, right? Moshe Rabbeinu is saying that it's not the chitzonius, it's Penimiyus. There's not just a shell of do these things, learn these things. There's something inside of the things, which means that it requires yediyah. And now, to that end, you'll take a look at the page base that you see there on the right-hand side. He points out that David HaMelech says the same thing to Shlomo HaMelech. This is a pasuk in Divrei Yomim. V'ata Shlomo b'ni da es Elokei avicha. Know the God of your father. Meaning, I have a God, says David HaMelech. You need to get to know him. It's not enough for you to do what he wants, because that's the next word. That's v'avaduhu b'leiv sholem u'v'nefesh chafetzah. You have to serve him. That's true. But there's also knowing him. And knowing him is something separate from serving him. There is a chiyuv of yediyah selakus. And then he explains as follows. And we're going to see the footnote here because it's kedai. It says, Ki ikar ha'avodu rak kefi ha'yediyah. You can only serve something that you know. And that is argument number one that the Ishbitz is telling us, yeah? The Rizin is telling us, is that the Ikar Avodah is only in accordance with your Yediyah. Take a look at the footnote at the bottom here. V'lezeh lashon Rambam in Hilchos Shiur in the 10th parak. Einoi oyev HaKadosh Baruch Hu ela b'das. She'yid'uhu. You can only serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning you can only love Hashem with knowledge. Meaning, how do you love something that you don't know? You can't love something that you don't know. There is a mitzvah min ha'Torah ve'ahavta as Hashem Elokecha. You can't love something that you don't know. The truth is, there's also a chiyuv of yiras Hashem. You can't fear something that you don't know. You'll tell me, of course you can fear things that you don't know. Yes? How can you fear something that you don't know?
Unknown.
That's called the unknown. However, the Ksava Kabbalah points out that there is a difference between pachad and yira. Pasuk says, "Mi pachad balelos." Pachad means fear of the unknown. Yira means fear of the known. It's good to be magdim. Yira shamayim does not come from I'm scared of what Hashem could do to me because I don't know who Hashem is and he's scary boogeyman out there in the. Aside from the fact that that's Yiras HaOnish, which is also Kedai. It's Kedai to have Yiras HaOnish, especially in modern neo-Chassidic context. People talk about Yiras HaOnish as a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. You should have Yiras HaOnish. You shouldn't only have Yiras HaOnish, but it's Kedai to have Yiras HaOnish. It's like, it's worthwhile. You should know that it's the second paragraph of Shema, that if you do mitzvahs, Hashem rewards you. And if you do Averis, Hashem punishes you. We do believe in reward and punishment. We believe in a relationship that's much deeper and much more profound than that. But we do understand that there's a system of checks and balances in the world, and it's Kedai to have Yiras HaOnish. Rav Charlap writes in one of his time, I don't remember where, but Rav Charlap points out, at least in one or two places, Rav Charlap was the primary Talmid of, one of the three primary Talmidim of Kook, says that all Yira is positive so long as it is not together with Yeush. Meaning Yira without Yeush is a good thing. Even Yiras HaOnish. You're afraid that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to punish you because you did an Avera. That's a worthwhile thing, so long as it doesn't come with a feeling of Yesh, of, well then, it's all over and I'm going to die and might as well not try anymore. Meaning, as long as there's no Yesh, Yira is good. All Yira is good, as long as there's no Yesh. But Yira requires Yediyah as well. The Rambam is saying that you need Yiras Shem, you need Yediyah Selikus in order to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Avos Hashem. He says, V'al pi hadas tiyeh ha'ava. And the more that you know, the more that you can love. That's basic. You can't love something you don't know. Im ma'at v'im harbe harbe. If you know a little, then you love a little. And if you know a lot, then you love a lot. Lefichach tzorich ha'adam liyachid atzme lahavin lahasik b'chachmas v'tvunas ha'modi'im loi im koinoi kefi koyach sheyesh ba'adam lahavin lahasik. Therefore, a person needs to apply themselves to understand, to intellectualize, to integrate into themselves what they could figure out of the Rebbeinu Shalom. In a Chanami, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite. In a Chanami, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is far beyond the capacity of any human being to understand. Nevertheless, whatever hasagas of Yediyah Selikus a person can achieve, they are obligated to do so. What is the shiur of the maximum amount of Yediyah Selikus that a person can achieve? Infinite. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite. So you can learn about Hashem forever. And I want to point out here that there's two words that people use interchangeably, especially in the modern context. There are people that people talk about theism versus atheism, right? Theism means I believe that there is a God. Atheism means, strictly speaking, I believe that there is not a God. It's also a emunah. You have to have emunah, that there's, meaning, it's not such a thing as an honest atheist. That you can't honestly say that there isn't a God. You don't know. In a Chanami, you don't know that there is, but you also don't know that there isn't. So the best that you can say is that you don't know. That's okay. We're okay with that. That's the Yesharim in India. But what the Rambam is discussing here, and what the Radzin is discussing here, is not knowledge of the existence of God. That is one piece of the puzzle. You need to know that there is a God. But the Torah is not obligating you simply to cross that threshold and now you have been mekayim the mitzvah of Yidiyas Elokus. I know that my wife exists. I know that. But there is much more for me to know of her than her existence. Evantem? Meaning there is knowledge that something exists and then getting to know that thing. Getting to know that person, that personality. And the more that you know of that person, the more that you have a relationship with that person. And that's the principle that the Rambam is telling you here. Is that the relationship that you have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is based on your knowledge of him. Now you have a shaila, how do you get to know him? That's a good shaila. But you understand that this is not a question of, I need to know that there is a God, and now check, I'm yotze the mitzvah. There is a permanent, persistent, consistent mitzvah of knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the mitzvah b'fnei atzma, that's true, but also as the basis upon which many other mitzvahs are built. And we'll see this in a moment with regards to tefillah, but the Rambam is saying with the mitzvah of Avos Hashem. And then the footnote here, it's kedai to see b'sefer Orinera, that's from the Ramak. The Rambam writes at the beginning of HaChassidus that the chiyuv is leida sheyesh sham matzah rishon, that there is there matzah rishon. What exactly does there mean? A matzah rishon. We are over here. Here. Matzah rishon. What does it mean? That there is this? Mashur shetzorach yediyah mamish v'asagas elikus k'fi koyach das ha'enosh, means that you need real knowledge, meaning actual knowledge, in the way that you can comprehend and understand. K'fi koyach das ha'enosh v'chein amar HaKasav da es elokei avicha v'avduhu, meaning that there is something to get to know. And there is an obligation to know that. So he says, what this means is that in order to serve Hashem appropriately, you need knowledge of him. We could spend probably a yovel just talking about these 5 words. But this means Yedias Sefirosov, to know his Sfiros. What does it mean, his Sfiros? So that is we'll say it in as simple language as we possibly can, is the emotional constructs with which HaKadosh Baruch Hu interacts with the world. V'hanhagasai, and the way that he engages with the world. V'yichudai bahem, and the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu within them. Translation, very simply, is to understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu engages with and interacts with the world in different ways at different points in time, in accordance with what is going on in the world and what is going on in the hearts and minds of people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu interacts with and engages with the world. Nevertheless, there is only one God, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is inside of all of those hanhagos. Every single person sitting around this table. Meaning every person engages and interacts in this world in different ways, at different points in time. Nevertheless, it is all the same you. Correct? You're not always acting in the same way, but you are always the same you, at least ideally, right? Sometimes it happens that a person isn't the same them all the time. But assuming that you are healthy and well balanced and everything working well, in your best self, you interact with the world in different ways at different points in time. There is the you that is in the base Knesset, and there's the you that's in the base Medrash. It's a different you. Meaning the avodah of Torah and the avodah of Tefillah are different avodas. And the avodah of being at home and the avodah of being in Kollel are different avodas. And you act in different ways. With your parents, with your siblings, with your friends, with your chavrusa. You act in different ways with different people at different points in time. So, to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu means, k'vyachol, like the same way of getting to know somebody else. Dating a girl, you want to get to know her, means you want to get to know her in all of the different areas that she engages with. And then to get to know the aspect of that person that is behind all of those things. It says, which we're not going to discuss right now. The appropriate avodah of being miyached HaKadosh Baruch Hu with his shechina, which we'll get to if we have time. Not today though. This is a very base kosov. Bezula zet yesh oid mitzvos she'i efshar lekaimon al tikunam im loy b'yedias ha'torah v'achachma ha'nifla ha'zos. And there are many, many aspects of Torah and mitzvos that you cannot do without this Yedias Hashem and this amazing Chachma. And that's what he's talking about, our narrative, meaning the Chachma of Penimiyus HaTorah, bless you. Chachma of Penimiyus HaTorah, you can't do these mitzvahs, you can't be an Eved Hashem, you can't do what you need to do in this world if you don't know who you are working with and for and what any of this is. It says, V'hein, and those mitzvahs, Avas Hashem v'yirasai, Shem shteit mitzvahs, mitzvahs aleinu b'Torah. Those two primary mitzvahs of Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem, you cannot do without a knowledge of who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. Can't do it. We should point out that the mitzvah of Avos Hashem and the mitzvah of Yiras Hashem are the shorish of all of the mitzvahs. The Gra points out that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us two mitzvahs. The rest of them we heard from Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the Gemara says Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, right? That's 611 because two mitzvahs we heard directly from Hashem. Those were the mitzvahs of Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Lo Yeh Lecha Elohim Achirim Al Panai. Those two mitzvahs, the mitzvah of Avos Hashem, meaning all positive mitzvahs are rooted in the mitzvah of Avos Hashem, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, and all negative mitzvahs are rooted in Yiras Hashem, not to do something, that is Lo Yeh Lecha Elohim Achirim Al Panai. That, says the Gra, is the shorish of all of the mitzvahs. Taryag mitzvahs, broken up into mitzvahs, aseh, mitzvahs, less aseh, and the makor of those mitzvahs is Av and Yira. Which means that in order to be a Jew, you need to know God. Otherwise, the whole thing is davar reik. That's the premise upon which the Beis Yaakov is operating. And then he quotes from the Ramchal, yeah? This is the footnote here. The Ramchal, this is the premise upon which the Ramchal is writing Mesilas Yesharim. It says, Me'ayin yavoi hadvekas ve'hais lahatus ben nafsheseinu imoy yisbarach ve'im teirasai im loy nisha el gedulasai ve'el ramusai asher yoylid b'libeinu hadvekas hazeh. How are you ever going to be on fire for a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and for His Torah if you have no idea the godless and the rominess of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How are you ever supposed to appreciate Hashem and His Torah if you don't know anything about it? Everybody good with the argument here? What is the purpose of this chabura, the purpose of this chibur? Is that you have to know something. There's something to know. And the point that he is making is that you are not going to learn it from a Gemara exclusively. Now, that's not to say that it's not in the Gemara. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if you're feeling like you have a chisaron in your Yedias Halakus and you've been learning Gemara for a few years, so then kedai to know that there are other things to learn. Not instead of Gemara, but in addition. That's the point. And this is effectively this general feeling of a chisaron in Yidus Alakus animated pretty much all three of the major movements that have changed Yiddishkeit in the last, at least Ashkenazi Jewry, in the last 300 years. You have Chassidus, you have Musar, and you have the Torah of the Ramchal, meaning those three Mahalchim effectively introduced Penimiyus HaTorah in different ways to different areas of European Jewry. The point of it effectively being that you cannot be an Eved Hashem, you cannot be a frum Jew without Yidiyas Halakus. There's just no way of doing it. And so let's finish the paragraph here. It says, Ki ikar avoidi rak b'fiyah Yidiyah. That's what we have effectively established. And then he says, Ki tefillah nikra avoidi shebalev. Just as an example, tefillah is avoidi shebalev, that is serving Hashem. Balev, what does it mean, balev? What does balev mean? Emotion, right? Emotionally. Like the Gemara says in Masechet Tanis, "Lo avda b'chol levavchem." Eiza hi avoda shi balev, have'am is a tefillah. In order to be able to serve Hashem through tefillah, you need to serve Hashem. Balev means using your emotions. What are these emotions? Ava and Yira. And as we have pointed out, Ava and Yira cannot be achieved without Yediyah. So you cannot daven if you don't know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because if you don't know Hashem, then you don't have Ava, and then you don't have Yira, and then you not make the mitzvah of tefillah. So ikar chasim in asef. You're not holding by anything. There's nothing there. One of the reasons, that people have such a hard time davening is because they have no idea who they're talking to. Right? Very hard to talk to somebody if you don't know them. You have no idea who this thing is. So you open up a siddur and you say Baruch. You don't know what the word Baruch means. Blessed. Ata. I don't know who Ata is. Yud Ke Vav Ke, no idea what that means either. Blessed art thou the Lord. Doesn't sound like anybody that I want to talk to. I don't know about you. So without knowing, what are you saying? It's not a you problem. It's a Klal Yisrael problem. Without knowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu in some way, certainly without growing in that Yidiyas Halakus, there is no way to be able to open up a siddur, open up a tefillah. You just can't do it. So people translate frumkeit into kvetching through the words slowly. Right? I'm going to daven with kavanah, means I'm going to say the words slowly and carefully and try to imagine that I'm talking to something. It's a waste of time. Because you don't know who you're talking to. And without growth in that area, you're never going to be able to learn how to daven. You're never going to be able to develop a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's a possibility of a person keeping 613 mitzvahs and getting up to Shemaim and having a conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and saying, I never knew who you were at all. It's possible. Lahavdil, maybe not so much Lahavdil. You see this with married couples. Married for 50 years, kids move out of the house, now they're empty nesters, they're at home by themselves. I know couples that after the kids have moved out, they get divorced. They weren't really thinking, maybe they were thinking, maybe they weren't, but 50 years of marriage later, finally getting to know you, I don't know if I like you. It's possible. Because the you that I married 50 years ago is not the same you as you are now. And there's 50 years of absentee relationship. It was just functional. I paid the bills, you paid the bills, I drove the couple, you drove the couple, I made the food, you made the food. We went on vacations. But it was all chitzenis. All chitzenis. There's nothing pnimi in that at all. It's a bittul zman. It's just nothing. There's nothing in there. So we'll see that he quotes this piece from the Zohar HaKadosh. We'll just see the first line here. We'll do it in the Hebrew, the Zohar HaKadosh in Parsha Shlach. Kavodi hi b'yir v'avad v'yitz b'Zohar HaKadosh. Says, Echad b'simcha l'kaim ivdu es Hashem b'simcha v'echad b'yira l'kaim ivdu es Hashem b'yira. These are mitzvahs. It says, Ve'eich yavoid b'yira v'yehav es Hashem lo yada. How could you love somebody that you don't know? Gedis v'agdamas tikun ezar, like the Zohar HaKadosh says. We'll see this on the left-hand side, which says, Madriga asiris b'yiras Hashem. It says, Madriga asiris b'yiras Hashem yesh yira v'yesh yira ve'en kol apanim Shabbos. There's yira and there's yira. Not all yiras are the same. Yesh yira asher adam yarim HaKadosh Baruch Hu mishum shelo yakeh ha'isa b'ritzuah. There's what we call yiras ha'inish. Afraid of being whacked. Hemin olav ein bur yori chet. And about that, Chazal say in bar yirei chet, you have no yiras hachet, which the Ramchal writes is the highest madrega of yira. It's yiras hachet, not yiras ha'inish. It's yiras ha'inish, yiras ha'rovim, it's yiras hachet. We're not going to talk about that today, but could I understand that that's not the same thing? But that's not called yiras Hashem. Somebody that has Yiras Hashem that comes from Tiferes, which is Surah Tiferes, which is in the middle of the spheres. That is the place of Torah. Many Yitzis Mishum Shehi Yiras Hayetz Mitoich HaTorah Shehi Omad Mitzay. Turning over the page here. Shehu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Havaya Ki Bishvilo Hemidu Balei HaMishna Gedol Torah Shemivia LaAdam Lidei Ma'aseh. Shema Adam lo yodea Torah schar mitzvah shela va'onishim shela l'mi she'oira al mitzvahs mishu shebara es haTorah mi hu hanoisen es al Yisrael eich yore es v'shem mitzvahs. Meaning, if you don't know HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is what the Tikkun Zohar is saying. If you don't know HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then when you say Baruch Noisen HaTorah, you don't know who the Noisen is. You don't know who the Noisen is. So you open up the Gemara, you say, "Oh, look at this beautiful Taisus." But there's no noisin. Nothing gave it to you. Nobody gave it to you. There's nobody there. Yiras Hashem means that you have yira of the noisin HaTorah. So mishum ze amar David l'shlom v'noi da'es Elohei avicha v'avdu. You have to know the God of your father and serve Him. Ki im ha'adam lo yodea oisa shenasan la'Torah v'gdei lishmar oisa. If you do not know the Noisen HaTorah, then why would you listen to what he says? Why would you fear him and do his mitzvahs? You don't know who he is. You are just following orders. That is not the chiyuv. Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, to be continued tomorrow.